Hello and welcome to the MyHeritage webinar series. This is the very first MyHeritage webinar of 2020. I'm Miriam Pierre-Louis, your host, broadcasting to you live from Eastern Massachusetts. Today we have Gina Philibert Ortega, who is live with us in Southern California for her class, 10 Must-Have MyHeritage Databases. Thanks to Gina and thanks to all of you for registering for today's live webinar. So wherever and whenever you are, glad to have you with us. We're thrilled to introduce MyHeritage Education, a new online resource center for enhancing your understanding of MyHeritage's tools, products, and services, and to help you make the most of your family history research. The website includes a wealth of educational materials that will help you learn about every facet of MyHeritage, articles, how-to videos, and the MyHeritage webinars covering a wide variety of topics, including plenty of tips for everyone. MyHeritage Education is currently available in 10 languages. Find all of the resources at education.myheritage.com. Gina Philibert Ortega holds a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies and a second one in religion. She is the author of From the Family Kitchen, Cemeteries of the Eastern Sierra, and Putting the Pieces Together. Gina is the editor of the Utah Genealogical Association's journal, Crossroads, and a board member of the Utah Genealogical Association. She is also a frequent speaker for Legacy Family Tree webinars and a regular contributor to the Legacy blog. Please put together your virtual hands and let's give Gina Philibert Ortega a nice warm webinar welcome. How are you, Gina? Welcome to the show.
I'm good, thank you. How's it going over there?
It's great, and we're excited about your topic tonight to learn more about the MyHeritage databases. So let me switch over to your screen.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
All right. It's all yours, Gina.
Okay, thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. And so we are going to look at some MyHeritage databases. And I'll tell you, obviously, there's a lot of reasons to like MyHeritage. You know, there's the DNA, there's the worldwide scope. There's just a lot going on there. But, you know, I'm a researcher. I love researching. And so that's what I want to focus on today. And specifically, I want to focus on the collection catalog. You know, I know that you can search, and I know you know how to search. I want to look at the catalog because it's through the catalog that I can see, you know, what's been updated, what's new. I can go ahead and search by location. I can do all kinds of things. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. In your handout, I talk about that there are different ways to search. And in fact, Cindy Engel did a fabulous webinar on searching MyHeritage. I highly recommend it. Your syllabus has the link to it on Legacy. So, you know, I'm not going to go into that because we've got a lot to cover. Now, as you can see, I said there's 10 must-haves, but there's actually 6,635 collections. So that's a lot. And to narrow that down is kind of a difficult task. Now, this is the other problem, and I thought about this as I was putting this together. What's a must-have? I mean, quite frankly, what's a must-have for me might be totally different than what's a must-have for you, and for all kinds of reasons, right? It's kind of like a house. You have different requirements for where you want to live. Right? You might need a big house because you've got a large family, you got lots of stuff, or you just like living in the suburbs. Whereas other people might just be them or their spouse or one other person, and they don't have a lot of stuff and they like city living or they like small apartments. So everybody's different. Well, you know, I do a lot of US research. You may not. And where I do US research might be different than where you do US research. So as I thought about everybody today, and I saw everybody coming in from Canada and different places, I wanted to appeal to everybody. So there are a few US examples, but there's some examples that I try to branch out so that it is not specific to one country. But the other thing is, I also wanted to think about not only location, which is important. Obviously, you have ancestors from a certain place, and I do. But I also want to give you some ideas about how to think about your research a little differently. So that's a lot to do. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what I was thinking as I put together these 10 must-haves. All right. Now, we're concentrating on the collection catalog, and that is accessible from the top of MyHeritage where it says research and then collection catalog. And you can see there's all kinds of collections within that catalog. And these are familiar collections, right? I mean, everybody knows the census. And there's stuff here that we expect to see with genealogy research. So censuses and family trees and birth, marriage, and death. But there's other things that I like to look at that I think people forget, and that's one of my focuses today as well. Now, what do must-have databases do for us when we think about genealogy? Well, ultimately, we're trying to put our ancestors in a specific place and time, right? That helps us know that it's our ancestor and not someone else's. And it's something that we need to do along with connecting kids to their parents. That's what we do in genealogy. So we expect databases to have that information or one of the other. Now, databases might also have clues to other information. So that's important. And databases might have stories or information about experiences that add to our family history. So most of us are, we put in a name, date, place, we're looking for facts and confirmation of facts. But what I'm telling you and what I'm going to show you is that sometimes we want more than that. Sometimes we need a little bit more to the story. And so good must-have databases might do that as well. All right. So we're looking at the collection catalog. This is what it looks like. And you can see up at the top, there's home, family tree, discoveries, and at the end is research. If you click on research, one of the choices is collection catalog, along with some of the larger collections like the census collection, for example. Now, this is constantly changing. As MyHeritage gets more information, either from their members or from collections that they acquire or digitize or however, this number goes up. I know I heard Daniel Horowitz speak a few months ago, and they were at about 10 billion records, and you can see now they're at 11. So this is constantly changing, which means as a good researcher looking to do exhaustive searches, we need to go back every once in a while and see how it has changed. So when we think about the collection catalog, there's a few ways we can go about this to look at what are the must-have databases that we're interested in. So one way is to search there at the top right. And this is a keyword search. It might be a place, it might be a record set, it might be an event, and I'm going to show you that towards the end. So it could be anything from putting in California to putting in yearbooks or the census. So that's one way we can get down to the databases we're interested in. But another way you can start off to see what is applicable to your research is to go over to this section where we can focus our research and narrow it down and actually refine it by location and then by collection. So you can do that so you can see just the collections that have something to do with what you are researching. Now, this is just one way to do it, and since we're focusing on the catalog, that's what I wanted to show you is this way. But that's another way you can get down to what you need. And obviously, if you're just curious like I often am, you could just kind of scroll down and see what there is. over on the right, you can sort this list by the number of records, and there's two other categories you can sort by. That's another way where you can become more familiar with what is available. I find that when I go through the catalog like this, I'm often shocked at what is available that I had no idea. And sometimes those smaller collections don't get as much hype as the bigger collections. And that's too bad, because sometimes it's those smaller collections that can do us the most good. All right, so let's start. And number one is not a specific database, because I wanted to be cognizant of everybody researching in all different places, but it is the Census and Voter List collection. Now, it's my number one because this is, especially the Census, is kind of our number one go-to database that we as genealogists go to. And that's because it gives us our ancestor in place and time. And it's a good way to start, because we can follow them through a specific time period and get that information to kind of build on our research. Now, both voter lists and censuses do that. However, there is, they're not perfect, right? Censuses don't always give every name, so we have to keep that in mind. And voter lists, not everybody could vote. And so, for various reasons, or didn't have the ability because of things like poll taxes. So it's important that we not make assumptions when we look at these, but that, we're gonna take a look, because they're one of the first things we often do look at. Now, you can specify which place is where you're researching, so you get exactly the results you want to see, because there's 148 collections. So let's say I wanted to research my French-Canadian ancestors. And so I chose Canada, and here's some of the Canadian censuses. I can click on one, let's say the 1911, and I go straight to that database's homepage. Now, this is important, and we often lose sight of this when we do a research from, like, for example, the super search page, or from maybe our trees or something else. Each database has its own homepage. And on this homepage, we can learn more about the database. We can see its specific search engine, and these are all different depending on what the content is that is indexed. And then, as you can see from this one, over on the right-hand side, there's related collections. And that's a little hint to us that, hey, when you're done searching this, try these others, because you might find something here and you might not have thought about it. Now, I like searching from database homepages, because often I find that when I can't find something in a larger search, like just an overall census search, it's easier for me to find it in a smaller search specific to that one database. All right. Number two, we've got a lot to cover, not a lot of time, so we're going to continue on. Now, I love books. And if you read Legacy's blog, you probably know this, because I write about loving books so much. This is, actually, I'm going to tell you about two collections. In fact, it's the related collection. But this is a collection I love because I like stuff that I'm not certain what I'm going to find. And this is a great example. So this is the Historical Books Index of Authors and People Mentioned, 1811 to 2003. So initially, when you look at this, you think, well, I don't have any authors. But remember, it's also people mentioned in books. Now, this is in the books and publications category, record category for MyHeritage, and it is searchable by name, book title, and publication year. I would probably suggest that you stick to name and don't worry about book title and publication year unless you, for some reason, know that. So this is kind of what you would get in return. So here's a result for a woman named Mary Hubbard Chatham. It tells me that her role in the book is that she is mentioned, so she's not an author, and that the book is called The 150th Anniversary, 1748 to 1898, of the Congregational Church of East Hampton, Connecticut. It's published in 1898. Now, that's great. Here is a church history book, and she's mentioned. So that's fabulous because that can lead me to some really good information. Now, it tells me that this source is available on Internet Archive. Now, if you're not familiar with Internet Archive, it is a website that, along with books, archives other materials. And so I know that I can click on that link, go straight to the book on Internet Archive, and look through the whole book, which is going to be good because maybe she's mentioned more than once, and maybe there's other Chatham family members. So this is a great find. Now, one of the reasons I love this collection and the next one I'm going to talk about is it allows me to see a bunch of resources in one place. So these are books found on other websites and they're in one place where I can do one search. So I love that. Now, here's another thing I want you to be aware of. Do you see how at the bottom there's a little photo of me and it says, do you have comments about this record? You know, when we do DNA and we have our DNA up on a website like MyHeritage and we get matches, that's kind of leaving a virtual breadcrumb trail for other people. This is another way to do it. Let's say Mary Hubbard Chatham is one of my ancestors, and I've done lots of research on her. Maybe I have a photo of her. I could write a comment there and leave that virtual breadcrumb trail so that people could find me and ask me questions and connect with me. Because really that's an important aspect of genealogy. So that's really great. And that does more for me than if I just went to Internet Archive, found the book, read it, did whatever I needed to. This allows me the opportunity to say, hey, I'm related to her. Let's talk. Now, here's the related collection, and I didn't make this a number 3, but see, you're getting more than 10 must-haves. This is the compilation of published sources, and you can see at the top that it's books, again, family, local, military histories, city and county directories, school, university, and hospital reports, church and congregational minutes. So lots more here. And the difference between the other collection is you're going to see the actual image from the page. Now, once again, I would just put in a name. I probably wouldn't put too much more. If you do have a common surname you're researching, like Smith, let's say, or Jones, or one of those, you could put a publication place. The problem is that a publication place may not be where the book is talking about. So I would probably not do that, and I would probably do keyword and put whatever that place is. And I might start with the state or, maybe the country and then go from there. Now, when you put in a search, this is what the results look like. I did a very minimal search. I did Martin Chatham, North Carolina. There were 10,000 results, so obviously that's way too much. So I need to narrow that way down. But you can see that you see a thumbnail of the image, a little bit about the source, and then I can click on there and learn more. So here's an example. This is the History of North Carolina, Volume 4, and Martin is mentioned here in a little write-up of his grandson, and it actually includes some information I didn't know, so I need to go back and check that out some more. So if I scroll down, because I'm just showing you the top part of this result, it tells me more about this source, kind of like a card catalog view. And then at the bottom, it tells me it's from New York Public Library. So theoretically, I could go and see if this is something as part of their digital collections or see what else that they may have. I could also use WorldCat, which is a library catalog, to see who else has this item if I wanted to. Now, the other thing I like about this is, do you see that it says OCR text on this page? It gives you the text from that image, just in case it's hard to read. It's just another way that you can look at it. All right, So let's move away from books and well, actually, to be honest, we're going to talk about books again later, but let's move away and let's talk about what makes MyHeritage unique. This is the question people always have, right? When they're trying to decide whether to subscribe to one website versus another. Why should I? What's unique about it? And so when we think about the census, and I should have mentioned this, we often think, well, who cares? Everybody's got the census. That's true. But the benefit of looking at the census on a different website is that not everybody uses the same people or technologies to index it. And sometimes one site has better images than another. So there is that benefit, even on a database that we think, who cares? But one of the things that makes MyHeritage unique is the content that they're providing you based on their members, and they have worldwide members. And this is one of my favorites. I'm actually going to show you two. This is Search Connect, and I love this idea. This is the idea that you put in your ancestor's name and you see who else is searching for that ancestor. So, and once again, there's a lot of fields you can fill out here. I probably wouldn't unless it's a very common surname, or I would try, not putting in too much, see what you get, and then do another search. Now, Search Connect, if you look up at the top and you click on the arrow and you learn more about it, it will tell you that it includes millions of searches by MyHeritage members and the metadata, so date, place, relatives they use in their search. So this is great because, quite frankly, a lot of times when we do genealogy, we do it kind of in a bubble. And we're isolated and we think, no one's doing research on this family or this person. This allows us the opportunity to see if there is somebody, and that somebody might have more information than you do. And so it's a great way to connect. So here's an example. I did a search on my ancestor, Moses Chatham. And so it actually came up with two hits, but here's one of them, and it was done by a member. He actually is related to me. He's a cousin. And so it tells me a little bit about him. It tells me when he joined MyHeritage, but most importantly, it tells me when he was last active. Now, why is that important? One of the complaints I hear people make is, especially in DNA, is that they make a discovery, they contact the person, they don't hear back. Well, if his last active was years ago, that might indicate a few things to me. It could be, if he doesn't contact me, that, okay, maybe he's not interested in genealogy anymore. Can you imagine somebody not being interested? But it also might mean that he has passed away. So this gives me some important information, or that he's not a member anymore. And so maybe I need to look at other ways to communicate with him. So I find that important. Now, the other thing is it tells me what family sites he's a member of. Those might be family sites that include my family, so I need to check that out. And then finally, it tells me, what did he search for? He was looking for Moses in the U.S. Civil War collection. Well, that makes sense to me. Moses was a U.S. Civil War soldier. I have information on that. Maybe he doesn't, and that's why he's looking for that. So that might be something I need to connect with him on. So this is a lot of great information. It's unique to MyHeritage. It gives you the opportunity to connect with other people. And I think this takes kind of the isolation of doing online genealogy and really takes it to a next level where we can learn more. So, somebody always has more information than you do, and this is a great way to figure it out. Now, similarly, number 4 is MyHeritage Photos and Docs. So unique to MyHeritage, it allows you to see, hey, who has photographs that I don't have, and see what you can find out there. So it's a different way. Instead of just looking for a family tree, it's looking at what MyHeritage members have on their family sites. Now, once again, think about how you search this collection. You can put in photo details. The more you put into a search engine, the fewer results you're going to get. That can be good, that could be bad, because you could narrow it down so much that, you don't have the ability to find what you need. Now, I did a really general search here. And so I did a search for Chatham, which is one of my familial surnames, and just to see what there was. And once again, there's too much. So I would need to really break that down. But here's an example, and it shows me all the thumbnails of these different images. And there's other things that I could also find, videos and audios, but we have some images here. What I like is I can quickly go through here and see what it says for birth, death, partner, children, and make sure it's the person I'm looking for. All right. Number 5. Now, this is U.S. specific. Even if you don't have U.S. ancestors, remember that MyHeritage has a map collection. And I often find on subscription websites, the maps and the reference collections are the ones no one uses. And that is a shame, because these are the collections that have wonderful information. So, this is one specifically I wanted to show you, but there's a catch. So you see here at the top, you see how it says U.S. property owners, and there's an arrow that points down. That means that you click on it and you can learn more about that collection. Always, always do that. It will lead you to less frustration, and I'm going to show you why. Now, the other thing I want you to notice is that this is a search by surname, year, place, and atlas. If I were you, I would probably search by surname and place and start there. Okay, so here it is, and I expanded that database description a little bit to find out more. And it tells me that these are from the website Historic Mapworks, and that is a website that has property owner maps. However, here's the big thing. This collection only contains the following states, so you can read those. You don't need me to read those. There's a lot of states missing there. Now, that might change over time, so I would always want to look back. But I want to know this, because if I don't have ancestors in those states, then, I may feel frustrated when I shouldn't, because it's not there. So always make sure you check that. Now, the other thing is, with maps and map collections, why are they so important? Boundaries change over time. And because of that, we need to be aware of that, because we might be searching for materials for records in places that didn't exist when our ancestor was there. So take advantage of that. Look in that collection, narrow it down by the place you're researching, and see what maps are available. Even if it's a map that doesn't have names, it still can be extremely valuable for those boundary changes. Now, why are property owner maps important? Well, they have names, and they show you who lived by each other. And that can give you some idea about, why did these two people marry? Well, they lived on, corresponding land. Where was the school? Where was the church? So that can give you some really good information. All right. Number 6. Now, number 6 is public records. Now, why is this important? Because we like researching dead people, right? So the reason this is important is because sometimes we got to find the living, or people who maybe died recently. This can not only help us to find people that we share relationships with, but also people who've been doing genealogy. It can help us do all kinds of things. So in this collection right now, it has U.S. public records and Canadian. Now that's right now. That's why it's important to always, look on social media, look on the blog, and see what is new to these collections. All right. So here's an example. I did a search, and here is a woman, Catherine Philibert. She was born in 1920. Now, obviously, she might not still be living at this point, but this information is from 2004. If you kind of look down the page here, you can see that. It tells me a possible relative. Maybe that's her husband. It also tells me a residence and a phone number. Now, I could, kind of check that out and see if she is still living and make a connection and that kind of thing. And obviously, this is a little older, so I could do a Google search and see if I find her, or do a search on MyHeritage and see if I find her in perhaps the Social Security Death Index. But what I like about this as well is, do you see on kind of towards the right, there's an orange link that says Show Neighbors? Well, that tells me who is her neighbors, and that might provide me very important information as well. So it's not just her, it could be other, even family members who live nearby. Now, it's easy to think that this is from telephone directories, right? Because we do have a phone number. But the description on the right-hand side explains that this is also property tax assessments, credit application, voter registration lists, and other public records. So it's a little bit of everything. But that's another way that you can see who is out there that you might connect with. All right. Now, if you look at your handout, number 7 isn't necessarily France Military Death Index, all right? I wanted to point out military death indexes or death records in general. And my dream was to give you everyone on MyHeritage, but there was too much. So I gave you some examples. Here is one, and best of all, it's free. So if you don't have a subscription, you can still check it out. Now, if we go to our collection catalog and we click on military, you notice there's 681 collections. Now, obviously, these are not all involving deaths. Some of them are death indexes, but there's also pension records. And sometimes pension records also indicate a death because a widow, for example, is getting that pension. You can go to the military collection. You can refine it by location and then see what is there for that location. You can even refine it by years. And that's okay to do. I sometimes don't like to do that because, especially with military records and things like pensions, they may have come years later after the war. And so they may not fit in that nice, neat category there, like 1700 to 1799. So I would just warn not to stop at refined by years. But this is a good place to look. The other thing I would warn you about is when we refine by location. Let's take World War I, for example. You might have a U.S. soldier or a U.S. citizen who was in World War I, but he actually fought for the Canadians. And the reason why is because the U.S. didn't enter World War I until years later. Some young men felt the need to pick up and fight in the fight, and they went to Canada or they went to the England, and they joined there, and they flew planes and did all sorts of stuff. So they would not be in U.S. military records. They would be in that country's military records. So that's another thing to keep in mind. All right. Now, we're going to talk about books again. And the reason is, besides that I love them, is I wanted to point out something that we may forget, especially if we always, search by name. And searching by name and date and place, that is important. But sometimes we've got to be a little bit more creative. And sometimes we need to search differently in order to do an exhaustive search. And so this is a good example. So remember how I said that a lot of people ignore maps, and they include kind of the reference collections or really the book collections, but they're usually not called books. In this case, this collection is called Histories, Memories, and Biographies. Now, this is a collection of family histories and local and genealogy history. And you may think, well, why am I searching another book collection? Well, it's different books, so you need to do this. Now, remember that search that we have at the top of the collections? This 2020 is the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower. And so this is a good time if you want to check out your Mayflower ancestors, you could do a search here. Now, I did a search and I just did Mayflower to see what would come up. And as you can see, there were only 7 collections or databases that showed up. 6 are family histories and 1 is a local general history. Sorry about that. And so I look through here and okay, this is good, but I want more than this. Well, that's when I've got to be a little more creative and think a little bit more about what else should I be searching. So Mayflower was okay, but let's put in Massachusetts because I'm assuming if you have a Mayflower person, they probably lived in Massachusetts and heck, maybe they still live there. So when I do the search for Massachusetts, I get 273 collections. All right, so that's a big difference between 7 and 273. Now, I can refine this search over on the left by family histories or local and genealogy histories and still get quite a bit, over 100 for each category. And so I can go through here and kind of see what might be useful to my research. So remember how in the beginning, when we first started, I talked about how databases, sure, they connect us familial relationships and they put us in time and location. But databases also provide us information that tells us more about our ancestors' experience or what they were involved in. And this is a really good example where searching by a name may not be the best way to do it. So, for example, our first search there, the old records of the town of Fitchburg, Massachusetts, maybe our ancestor isn't there, but they are from that area. It still would benefit me to go through that and see what it says about that place in the time my ancestor lived there. So, that's something to consider. It's not always a search by name, date, and place. Sometimes it's a search of the location our ancestor was a part of, or an event, or a religion, to give us that background to help us better understand. That book might tell of an event that happened when your ancestor was there that you didn't even know about, and that might lead you to additional records. So basically, what I'm saying is don't ignore databases that you might be searching in a different way. And not everything is found by name. All right, number 9. Now, number 9 is immigration records. Now, I put this here, and this actually isn't a database, it's a collection of other databases. But one of the reasons is I know I always hear people saying, I want to know what ship my ancestor, uh, you know, arrived on. And sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes there's not passenger lists. Sometimes there are. So one of the things that you might want to do, we talked about, doing a search on an individual database. Like, for example, in this collection, there's Germans immigrating to the U.S., but it might also be worthwhile to do a search on, the collection, like this collection of databases, so you can see if there are hits within any of the databases in the collection. Now, once again, you've got all kinds of, search engine boxes that you can use in order to do that search. Name, birthplace, immigration, residence. And you may want to put in a lot, and then if you don't get hits, scale that down a little bit. But this is a good example of all kinds of databases that might be relevant, but you're not really sure. And so do a search on the collection and see what you find. All right. Now, I told you that I had a hard time deciding what I should tell you about. And one of the reasons why is I wanted to be, cognizant of everybody's needs and where you're searching and places and all of that. But as you also know, I love unusual sources and I write about them on the Legacy blog, and I'm always on the lookout for them. And this is a source that actually has a place in my heart because I know about this source, and growing up, I read this. My grandmother read it, who did genealogy, and it's one of those sources that are easy to ignore, but might have really good information. So let me explain. If you're in the US and you've been doing research for a long time, then you have heard of Everton's Genealogical Helper. That was a magazine that was, genealogy, methodology, how-to articles. It included indexes, all kinds of stuff. And so it was a great magazine. It's not published anymore, hasn't been for years. I think maybe in the 80s or 90s or so. Well, maybe 2000s. So this collection, now you might be seeing the title, Everton Pedigree and Family Group Sheets, and you might be thinking, I've lost my ever-loving mind, because this is probably the equivalent to online trees. And we know how bad online trees can be. But think about what online trees do for you. They provide you some information, clues that you can follow up on. That's exactly what this does. Now, this is pedigree charts and family group sheets that Everton readers submitted. So, what that means right off the top of my head is no source citations, right? So, this is information they typed, wrote, whatever. They have no source citations, and it may be really good or it might be really bad. So, I already know that going into this. But it's a clue. Now, in case anybody doesn't know, a pedigree chart shows us our direct lineage, right? Family group sheets show a couple and their children, but also can have spouses on there and the parents' parents. So you can do a search. This is what it looks like when you do that search. Now, even though this was a US magazine, obviously people have ancestors from all over, and so it is not entirely US based. And so here's a family group record, and I looked for Chatham's, and this is James Owen Chatham, 1835 from Wilkes. I can click on this so that I can read it better. And there it is. And, not the best, right? I mean, there's nothing but years here. There's not really anything very specific. It does give me who the person was who compiled it, and it gives me their information. And so it's a clue, and that's okay. It's good to have those clues. Now, here's another example, and I know this is horribly difficult to read. I'm actually going to enlarge what I want you to look at, but this is a family group sheet. It's in this horrible early computer type that's so hard to read, but I don't know if you can tell, but at the bottom is some notes from the person who submitted this. And the person who submitted this, he is listed as a child on this family group sheet. So there's the information. And he writes, Dad, so that's his dad, who is the father on this sheet, was a farmer all his life. Mom was a teacher at Star School in Bent County. Not sure whether it was before or after she married Dad. Mom died when I was very young, 5 years old, from complications associated with cancer. Dad raised all of us kids with a lot of help from my older sisters, especially Mary. There's information from somebody who experienced it. So that's primary information. He experienced it. He knows this information. Some of it is firsthand, some of it isn't, that he is providing that you might not get elsewhere. That's the beauty of a collection like this, is stuff that you don't know what to expect. So I know that collections like this, you might think, who cares? But you never know what you might find. As well as some of these people who submitted this information might still be around, and they may be looking for somebody who is interested in their genealogy and who wants that information. So that's something to consider. All right. Now, that's not the only Everton's collection that is available on MyHeritage. So those are the pedigree and family group sheets that were given to Everton's. Everton's was a magazine. And if you remember Everton's, people would write in and they would do little ads. I'm searching for this person. Please contact me. There would be things like that in Everton's. Well, you can search for those. And I know personally, I have found people who wrote to Everton's who were doing research that I'm doing, who provided just a few little clues that I had no idea about. So you can search this collection as well. Now it's in that collection that nobody looks at, directories, guides, and references. I look at that and I think, oh, see, directories. But there is a collection called Genealogy Magazines and then Everton's Genealogical Helper. So I can do a search and see what that has in store for me. Now, hopefully you got the idea that, MyHeritage has lots of great stuff, right? It has things that we all want, things like censuses and voter lists and kind of the meat and potatoes of genealogy. But they also have content that is unique to them because it's either member submitted or it's just little collections that they have gone for or that have been given to them that aren't anywhere else. The way you find that is to become curious and to look at the collection catalog and go through these various categories, seeking out what might be different. Yes, you should search by name, date, place. You should do that. Absolutely. And MyHeritage helps you with that because they give you hints in your family tree. But you should also take some time to browse the collection catalog. See what's there that you might not see otherwise, that might give you ideas for the project that you're doing. Those are going to be your must-haves. And based on just looking at it, doing those browses, and thinking up what questions you have about your genealogical research. All right. So I hope that gave you guys some ideas. I know, everybody's different, but hopefully that kind of gives you some encouragement to go and seek out what is there. I'll tell you, one of the things that, I almost felt like I should have said 600 must-have databases or something like that, is as I was going through the various collections, I found stuff I had no idea was available on MyHeritage. And so that really showed me how we can kind of become complacent and just do our searches and not really think through all that benefits us on a subscription website. So those are just some thoughts. So, Marion, are there any questions?
All right, Gina, before we get to the questions, I'm going to do a few announcements.
Yes.
So let me do that first. But I do want to say, if anybody does have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. However, keep in mind that Gina does not work for MyHeritage, so she cannot answer website issue-related questions or content future, decisions, that kind of stuff. So if you have genealogical questions, that would be great. But, really specific MyHeritage ones, she most likely won't be able to answer. But let me take this back. We'll do our announcements, and then we'll get to the questions. All right. Our next webinar will be MyHeritage DNA for Your Family Knot by Jennifer Dondero, and that will be Tuesday, January 28th at the same time. And you can go online right now to register for that. And here we are already, our first door prize. So our first door prize is a 1-year MyHeritage Complete plan. And this will give you access to a lot of information here from the Premium Plus Family Site subscription and also from the data subscription, which gives you access to all the records that Gina was talking about today. So let me go to our attendee list, and here we go. And just pick somebody out here. All right, that's going to go to Walt Queering. So congratulations, Walt. You've just got yourself a MyHeritage 1-year complete plan subscription. I'm just going to write your name down. And so what happens with this one, since this is the MyHeritage series, we forward your information to the folks at MyHeritage, and you will get an email from them regarding your prizes. But it should happen pretty quickly. Okay, and our next prize is a MyHeritage DNA kit, which, well, I hope you've already tested. You can buy a kit directly and test, or you can download your DNA if you've already tested somewhere else and upload it to the MyHeritage website. But what you're getting with this door prize is an actual kit, which you can use for yourself or maybe for the oldest member in your family or whoever you choose. And let me pick somebody from our audience for this, and that is going to go to Catherine Negritz. So congratulations, Catherine. We're going to be sending a MyHeritage DNA test kit your way. All right, and if you weren't here at the very start of the webinar, I wanted to make sure that I told you about the new MyHeritage Education. This is a new online resource center for enhancing your understanding of MyHeritage's tools, products, and services, and to help you make the most of your family history research. So, take what you learned today and then go to this site, and it will help you even further make the most of the MyHeritage products. This website includes a wealth of educational materials that will help you learn about every facet of MyHeritage. So articles, how-to videos, and MyHeritage webinars are there. So this webinar will be there as well. And it covers a whole variety of topics and tips for everyone. And it's also in multiple languages, which you can see at the bottom there. And you can find this at education.myheritage.com. All right, let's get back to Gina. And we'll see if we have any questions. I know we had a couple of questions flagged right from the start. Let's see. Shirley says, "Do you recommend leaving email addresses on the comment page?" Remember how you were talking about commenting?
Yeah, you could. I guess you could do that. I mean, I would think that they could also. Yeah, I mean, you could. What I would do, because, you never know if you leave your email out there. I would have an email that's just for genealogy, and probably that's, through Hotmail or Gmail if I was going to do that. I would think, and, I wish there was maybe somebody who could tell us, they probably, at least if they have your name, I would assume that they could connect you and message you through MyHeritage. So I don't know that's necessary. So I'm not really sure, Shirley.
Yeah, if you have a MyHeritage account and you say in your comment that I'm a MyHeritage member, just search for me in the member search that you showed us. Maybe that would work. But I don't know either.
Sorry about that.
All right. Zoe wants to know, and again, not sure if you would be able to answer this, but you could probably take a pretty good stab at it. Does the historical books database overlap with Percy? Or what's your best guess on that?
No.
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 Okay.
So that's a good question. Percy, the periodical source index, which is housed on another subscription website, is periodicals. And it is constantly being updated, and it's, oh, I can't remember, it's thousands of periodicals. So this historical book collection is totally different. So no, you should be searching both.
Okay. A couple comments here. Willeen said, this has been an amazing webinar. Thank you. Elizabeth says, this webinar is great. I only recently decided to subscribe and I really needed this. And Echo is looking forward to seeing what she can find. Shirley is offering a hint here. She says, look for town histories published in towns in Canada. For example, Caron, Saskatchewan.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's a question for you, and I'm only asking you this because I know you're the queen of favorites. Zoe wants to know, can we save collections as favorites? You're usually on top of that sort of stuff. That's a good question.
That's a good question.
If not, they should add that feature.
Yes. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't see why not. On a different topic, can I just say real quick,
yeah.
Marion, last night I was at my genealogy society and I was talking to someone and we were talking about, wanting to digitize things and making them available for other people to find, because let's face it, our families aren't always thrilled to inherit a bunch of paper or research or whatever. And some of the things that I showed you today in these 10 must-haves that have to do with member submitted information, that's what I like about that. Because if I upload, for example, a collection I inherited from a cousin that they're not my ancestors, they're her other side, and, I can upload those someday, people who care about that side of the family can find it. If something happens to me and my kids throw that away, it's still there. And I think that's the beauty of some of this member submitted information, is it helps us now, but it also helps the future. So I just wanted to also point that out.
Okay. That's a good reminder. Here's a question I'm going to take a stab at. Noelle asks, how can I stay anonymous while I'm searching on these websites? And I think it's all about the username that you pick, Noelle. I don't believe that you need to use your real name for what's visible. So go into the settings to find that.
Yeah, and you don't have to, you saw that if I made a comment or anything, it shows my photo. You don't have to have your photo on there. You could have the default image. So, obviously your privacy is important and you decide that for yourself. And any website like this where it allows you to, connect with other members, you can have a different username. You can have a different photo. You don't have to give all your information. So, in fact, I always remind people, don't put living people on family trees unless they've given you permission and that kind of thing. So those are important things to look at, and you can always do that in your account settings.
And the funny thing is, back in the day, in the 60s, when our parents were doing this, they all put living people on there because there was no internet or anything. So,
yes.
Kay and Petriva are calling me out because of the slide that says 10 languages. So you're right. It's 11 languages. All right. It's 11 languages. But English was the given because this webinar is in English and the handouts, everything we've given you today is in English. So we were kind of saying 10 additional languages. So anyways, there you go, guys. You're right. It's 11. Tracy would like to know if you can quickly list the 10 must-haves again. Do you have the list available to you, or do you need me to list it?
It's on the handout. And no, I don't have the handout in front.
All right, let me I'll just tell you real quick. I'll do it for you. Number 1 was census and voter list, 2 historical books. Now these are also in the chat. So if you go to your control panel and you select File at the very top, and then you select Save Chat Log. It will save all this to a file which you can put on your desktop or whatever. And it has a title like Census Voter List, and then it has the URL, okay? So 1, Census Voter List, 2, Historical Books, 3, Search Connect, 4, MyHeritage Photos and Docs, 5, U.S. Property Owners Index and Maps, 6, Public Records, 7, Military Deaths, and Gina provided a whole bunch there. France, UK, Vietnam, Korea, all these different conflicts. 8, Histories, Memories, and Biographies. 9, Immigration and Emigration Records, and 10, Everton, both the Pedigree and Family Group sheets as well as Everton's Genealogical Helper. And I just want to say, Gina, that I actually had a subscription to Everton's Genealogical Helper, like, I can't remember exactly, somewhere between 2006 and 2009, right before they went out of business.
Yes, yes. And you know what? My dream was to write for them.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, but I never did write for them. But yeah, they were such an important resource for so many years. That's why I love that collection. Is I often think about how some things in genealogy are ephemeral,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good example. But here is where you can access that information that otherwise would just kind of be gone.
Yeah, I get nostalgic about the Everton's Genealogical Helper because that's what my mother was a genealogist, so and she
Yes.
always used that. It was the thing. So it's kind of fun that you included that. Mitzi says, "Will the handout be sent out after?" No, we don't send out the handout. You can go to the web page, and I will. So right now, the handout appears on the registration page, which is live, and after the webinar, it appears on the webinar replay page. So it's a slightly different URL. But if you go to familytreewebinars.com, you'll see this particular webinar, and you just click into that, and you'll be able to access the handout. Now, keep in mind, this is a MyHeritage series webinar. It's the beginning of the year, and we might have new people here. So MyHeritage series webinars are free and are always free, and the handouts are free. Same with the BCG webinars are free to watch for a week, and their handouts are free. But most legacy webinars, the handout is a member benefit. So if you come back tomorrow to watch our legacy webinar, the handout will not be free. It's a member benefit. So just to clarify that, because sometimes people get confused because there are different series going on. So this series is sponsored by MyHeritage, and that's why that's the case there. I'm just scanning real quick to see if there are any other questions. And I am not seeing anything, so I think we're good. Gina, this was a wonderful webinar. There's so many great compliments here from people thanking you for a fantastic presentation. As Joey's just saying, Zoe is saying that right now, fantastic presentation. So thank you, Gina, for all your time in putting this together and sharing, the resources and databases that have helped you so much with your genealogical research.
No problem. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who has been here today. Appreciate you turning up for the very first MyHeritage webinar of 2020. We're going to have a great year. Next one is on February 28th, so we hope we will see you for that. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.